Hey, y'all. Thank you so much for joining us on the Gamers for Peace Twitch channel. We are an initiative of Veterans for Peace. We are here today to hear some stories of resistance. If you don't know me, my name is Jules. I am a gamer for peace. I am a veteran for peace. I am a veteran of the United States Air Force, and I was ordered to participate in the horrific acts of terrorism perpetrated on the people of Iraq by the United States military. One of the ways that I repay my cosmic debt is by participating in organizations like Veterans for Peace and trying to end war, because war sucks. And so this program is a part of that. I'm not sure how many of y'all are familiar with the term right seat, left seat. Basically, what it means is when a new unit is entering an area to relieve a previous unit, they do a right seat and a left seat ride. The person from the previous unit rides in the left seat. The person from the new unit rides in the right seat and learns from the person in the left seat so that there is continuity, right? And so that's why we're here. This is our right seat ride. And I have a few guests with me today. Today in our left seat, we have Susan Schnall, who is a U.S. Navy veteran, an organizer, a war resistor, and has recently been elected as the president of the board of directors of Veterans for Peace. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Susan.
Thank you for asking me, Jules.
Absolutely.
Pleasure to be with you. Yeah.
Cool. In our right seat, we have Kesley Carrion, who is a U.S. Army veteran, a gamer for peace, and is currently studying human-computer interaction at DePaul University. Thank you so much for being with us, Kesley.
That was a great intro. Thank you.
Awesome. Susan was marveling in our pre-show about how cool the human-computer interaction as a major is. So that's really cool. All right, so we are going to get a little bit into our stories of resistance. So let's start with Susan. You were in the U.S. Navy during the Vietnam era. What year did you join? Were you drafted? What year was that?
I joined the United States Navy, and when I was going to nursing school, they paid for my education. So like a lot of folks, that's why I joined. Only I joined after I had my education. So they paid for my last couple of years of schooling. And then I went into the Navy as a nurse. And I have to tell you, I guess like a lot of people, I had never had any interaction or much interaction with the Navy other than family stories. Mm-hmm. Just didn't know much about it. And as I said, I went in as a nurse to take care of people who had been harmed.
Mm. Interesting. That's kind of similar to your story, isn't it, Kesley? Didn't you go to a military school? Am I right?
Yeah, I went to the Virginia Military Institute. So I did it the other way around, where I got my education very militarized in very militarized sense on the front end of my service. So I kind of started off with a big bang, so to speak. And yeah, that's how I did it. And they did not pay for my school, though.
Oh, what kind
unlike
of
other Army
that?
Officers. Yeah, I graduated over $60,000 in debt. I think I have about half of that paid off now. Wow. Yeah, I was one of the few that didn't get any sort of monetary compensation.
Wow.
Good stuff.
Wow. That's
Got
crazy.
As right. Jill said, this was at the height of the war in Southeast Asia, and the military desperately needed nurses. So they paid for education. Mm-hmm. There are a number of us that joined the Army and the Air Force, and then went in after we graduated.
All right.
No, I'm happy for you. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Get that free school.
Yeah, for real. So at what point did you start resisting during your service? Susan, how long had you been in when you started your path of resistance?
Oh, it was not passive. So my
path
was
of resistance. My apologies.
Yeah, right. I was based at a Navy hospital in Oakland, California, and took care of the wounded who came back from war, mm-hmm. and saw war firsthand. And after about a year, I really was kind of scared about what the military could do to me if I resisted. I went in saying I wanted to take care of guys and get them better and get them back to their families. And I saw that that wasn't happening, and heard their voices of rage and racism towards the people of Vietnam, and heard the stories of terrible destruction and death that they caused. And just quickly, we had one unit that was all what we called amputees. So they were guys who had lost arms or legs, had terrible infections and nightmares and stories that I heard when I was working nights. After about a year, I thought, I can stay here and just keep taking care of people and have them be sent back to war. And after that time, I said, no, I can't. I can't in good conscience look at myself and be a part of this military institution, be part of the war machine that continues to destroy and kill people in Southeast Asia. There was going to be a GI and Veterans March for Peace in San Francisco, and I became part of the organizing group. It was really cool. It was people from the Air Force, and we were organizing GIs and Veterans for Peace in San Francisco. We handed out flyers. That was in the old days when you handed out flyers instead of posting announcements or emails. So we handed out flyers on the hospital base where I worked, and we put up posters. They were all torn down by the time morning came. And I remember seeing films of the news of what was going on in Vietnam and South and Central Vietnam, where the United States was dropping flyers urging the Vietnamese to go to protective hamlets to avoid being sprayed or bombed by the United States military. And I thought, if the United States can do this 8,000 miles away and use these weapons for war, why can't we organize a group in the United States and drop leaflets for peace?
Wow.
I had a friend who was a pilot, and we rented a Piper single engine plane, filled it up with flyers, and flew over military bases in the San Francisco Bay Area. We dropped those flyers on Oak Knoll Naval Hospital, on Treasure Island, which was a Marine base, on Yerba Buena Island, on the Presidio, an Army base. And then we flew into Alameda Naval Air Station and flew fairly low after over an aircraft carrier. And we dropped the flyers on the aircraft carrier. All the flyers were announcing the GI and Veterans March for Peace. And then we flew back into Palo Alto and held a press conference to announce, yes, we had just done this action and we were organizing for the following Saturday. This was on a Thursday. I then received, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
a notice from the Navy. They handed this Navy regulation on Friday to everybody coming into work. And it said, no active duty military personnel can wear their uniform while participating in a political, religious demonstration publicly.
So was that a new regulation that they put in place right then?
You got it.
Oh, wow.
Right. And then handed it to all of us of course, in these days, handed it to us as we came to work. That was on a Friday.
Wow.
And I thought, General Westmoreland has just gone before Congress asking for more troops to be deployed, for more armaments, for more planes to drop bombs. And if he can wear his uniform for war in front of Congress, why can't I wear my uniform for peace in this country? So I wore my uniform and marched in the peace demonstration. And the military intelligence has full copies of the entire march.
Of course they do.
But that was my active resistance, the beginning. And then organizing almost became easy, because as I would come to the hospital to work, I could hand out our underground newspaper because everybody knew who I was. They'd ask for the paper, they asked for when meetings were. And so it was easy for us to kind of get together and talk. I should say 6 months later, after my general court martial, I was given a sentence of 6 months confinement at hard labor. But I think part of the problem in those years was what were they going to do with a woman in what federal prison?
Yeah.
So they sent me back to work. And again, for the next few months that I was in the hospital, we did organizing, although several times the admiral picked me up and said, you know, we're going to reassign you somewhere where you don't have people-to-people contact. But they couldn't do that. And so we continued to organize and started a coffee house. That was the beginning.
Nice. How did, the order they put down about the uniforms, I feel like if you were violating it, then so was the guy. Did anything ever happen to the guy who went in his uniform before Congress? Of course not, right?
No, General Westmoreland, he was responsible for thousands and thousands of deaths.
Of course. Yeah. And as they let you go back to work as if working in a hospital with people coming back from the Vietnam War was not hard labor. Like it makes it, that is hard labor for sure.
It was not complete confinement. And they told me they were going to put me in a part of the hospital where I wouldn't have access to people to organize. So they put me then on what was known as the women's unit and pediatrics to keep me separate from everybody else. I should say, in the military in those years, your sentence started running the day it was adjudged. So the day that I was found guilty and then sentenced to the 6 months, that's the day my sentence started to run on. And by the time they decided, no, she doesn't have to go to hard labor, was the end of my sentence.
Oh, wow. Okay.
In those years, right?
Wow, that is an amazing story of resistance. And I hear this a lot running in Veterans for Peace circles of people who resisted while they were on active duty. And that is not something that I ever did. I'm curious, Kesley, were you doing any kind of resistance when you were on active duty? Did your awakening come after you got out? Like, how did that work for you?
I mean, my resistance was probably more personal.
Yeah.
I wasn't like using up military airspace like Susan was. I'm more impressed by how you guys were like authorized to fly in that airspace. But no, I mean, my resistance was probably a little bit more personal. And it maybe didn't start until my last like year or two when I was working in the 82nd Airborne Division headquarters. And it was during this time that I was coming to terms with being transgender and wanting to transition, to a more, transmasculine sort of appearance. And working in the 82nd Airborne Division headquarters, it's incredibly political. And I was a captain working in the military police cell. And my last 2 years, that's when I was thinking, do I want to start taking hormone therapy? And I guess one of my first acts of resistance was to cut my hair incredibly short. I was always known as being a gay female. I'm using military language there.
Yeah.
I was always known as being a gay female in the military. I was pretty out as a gay female. I was very prideful in that. But I was still very feminine. I mean, part of being non-binary is that you take on different traits from whatever gender kind of feels right. So my leadership style was definitely very feminine, a little bit more nurturing than the men. But what ended up happening was in my last year, I cut my hair super short, really short. It was 1 centimeter long on top of my head. And then I have these curls. So it was super shrunken. And a lot of the men didn't take well to that. People that I really respected, men that I thought, genuinely respected me as an officer, had really rude gross things to say to me, like, why would you do that? It doesn't look good. Because I guess I was kind of fighting against, like, my gender in that sense, because they were fine with me so long as they were fine with the gay female thing. Like, honestly, they were. But once I started to like push the gender binary, and people were confused when they saluted me, and people would be like, all the way, sir, man, like they'd be like confused about it. People were getting really upset with me. I think a big reason why is because people have to figure out, am I going to say sir or am I going to say ma'am? And they got really confused because people would see me and they'd think sir automatically, because my hair was so short. And in the military, hair is so important. And so it's kind of a little secret rebellion. I mean, I wasn't out as trans because this was also hot and heavy during the Trump administration's ban on transgender people. And so I was just trying to be myself in that toxic kind of structure, and also kind of just, rebelling against the gender norms that were even instilled in us in the military. I mean, they talk so much about, like, oh, women, need to be able to pull the same weight, and, oh, PT scores for women are lower and all this stuff. But then, you cut your hair, and for some reason, because you're messing with the gender binary, that upsets them. And that makes them dislike you and hate you. So that was what I kind of did. It wasn't as outspoken. It was a personal sort of thing, so that I didn't kill myself either.
Hey.
Yeah.
You are not alone in that. Seriously, if not for an incredibly supportive group in my town of my friends, I would be there as well. And I just want to say that all of these forms of resistance, whether they came while you were active duty or after you got out, whether they were super bold and brash the way Susan's were, or if they were small to you and personal, all of those forms of resistance are incredibly valuable and needed for us to be able to fight the war culture that allows wars to be so prominent in our world today, for sure. I wonder, Susan, if you experienced any misogyny, like anything like that, when you were in the military back in the 60s. I assume you experienced misogyny. I mean, shit, I sure did too. Like, I wonder if that's a common experience that we share.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And remember, I was a nurse. So, and again, in those years, I wore white, literally starched uniforms.
Oh, wow.
And I think of my patients who needed care and concern and hand holding. That's what nurses were supposed to do. Was there an issue with the doctors? They were young and they were very busy. And so nurses had most of the responsibility for the patients. This was a 1,000-bed hospital. And I think they liked that just fine. We also outnumbered the doctors, who were all male, and the patients who were dependent on us for care and treatment. It was a little different. There were, however, sometimes with doctors who would want to make a pass or want to make sexual innuendo or a comment. And that, it's interesting. When I think back to that time, I guess it was, there they are, and you walk away. It was not being surrounded all the time, as Kelsey, you were, just all of the time. Mine was people who needed to be taken care of. So that was really different. What I did hear about, however, because there was publicity about the case, was that, and I still have these letters and notes from people who thought I was a person of color. So I had a lot of racist comments, news articles. And as I said today, I still write these letters that said, go back where you came from. And it's like, go back where I came from. Well, guys, here I am. I'm not going anywhere. So it was a different kind of attitude, but very hateful. Yeah. Very hateful. It's America, love it or leave it. And they told me to leave it.
Yeah, For sure.
Right.
So, just to start with, if you are watching our program, if you are femme presenting in any way, or even look like you might be a person of color, fucking avoid the military at all costs. Straight up.
Right.
I wonder. I remember very, very much a part of my service in motivating me to hate the enemy. Basically, I know that racism was a very, very big part of that, and part of the programming. And yeah, I'm sorry, I had a question and then it just floated out of my head. I'm gonna go for a question that came to the chat from Haven, who is one of our newer, more active members in our Discord. Thanks for joining us, Haven. Haven is wondering your reaction in seeing the soldiers in the hospital, and wondering if they were aggressive, or if they. I think where the question is coming from is were they suffering not only physically but mentally? I think that's where that question is going.
There's never was any question in my mind that they were suffering emotionally from what they had seen and what they had done. I used to, as I think I mentioned, I worked nights, and I would hear their nightmares as they thought they were still crawling through minefields and somebody was going to shoot at them. I actually heard different attitudes depending on what service the guys were in. If they were in the Navy, if they had kind of friendly relationships with the Vietnamese, they had a different type of attitude than the guys who were the grunts in the field, who would talk about the enemy and talk about the Vietnamese in very racist terms. And I mean, I have these stark memories of one of the young patients who said they were the enemy. They all should have been lined up and killed. And I just, it's like you hear that, and what do you say? Say to this young man, well, they're human beings like we are. And I would try to talk with them, and then sometimes just have to walk away. But to me, that was even more of a lesson of saying, this is what this war is about. We are throwing bombs from the sky. We have soldiers in the field, and we teach our soldiers to hate people who look differently from the way we do. So the killing becomes easier. That was an issue. And yes, I did know from talking with the guys and what they had seen and done that there were going to be long-term emotional issues with what they had seen and what they had participated in. You could see the beginnings of their hospitalization and almost predict what was going to happen. But remember, this was a while ago, and it was before we were able to learn and talk about post-traumatic stress and moral injury. So you had these guys coming back and suffering terribly, having family and friends not understand what they had gone through, and not being able to talk a whole lot about it because they would be told, right, act like a man, right, take it. So it was dealing with all of those issues and the military and the military attitude.
We're out of the military now. How are we resisting today? Let's start with Kesley. How are you resisting war today?
Oh gosh. I mean, I guess being a member of Gamers for Peace
Hell
and Veterans
yes!
for Peace, obviously. But also, I'm pretty open about my service, I guess. Like for example, at school, we have to do our introductions, and they always ask about, every semester when you're in a new class, they're like, what's your working, history? Because we're in graduate school now, so that's always important. And I'm always pretty transparent about being in the military, but I'm also, the language that I choose to use when I do these introductions, I make it clear that it's not something to be exalted. I'll matter of fact, say yeah, I was, a veteran out of Fort Bragg for 6 years and blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, my background's incredibly militarized, whereas I am not, like to be clear. And I think just being a kind person, I find that like people automatically like have this like reverence that they give you like once they hear of your military service. They're like, oh, like you were in the art, like whoa, you jumped out of airplanes, like wow, like you're something else. But I hope that like in just being a kind person and in being humble and in having my Veterans for Peace flag behind me in every class, that it might make people question their ideas of like what a veteran can look like. And then especially if there's a veteran that is just moving through the world like with peace sort of in the forefront of their language and their rhetoric, and just trying to help others all the time, and never kind of, being transparent about my service, not hiding it. I've thought about hiding it, like, should I hide it? Like, and because people are automatically going to be some type of way, like, should I just be like, oh yeah, like I went to school for political science, just say like, just gloss over that. But I figured I wouldn't because not many veterans look like me also. And so kind of giving people a different idea of what a veteran can look like, and then not being afraid to challenge people's like assumptions if they do, and also really promoting like them asking questions. I'll often find that people are very shy to ask questions. That goes back to like the reverence thing, like they don't want to ask questions because they feel, like you're like this untouchable person. But I try to get people to feel as if they're in a space where we can, just have dialogues about anything, be it, gender presentation, my service, and, how I truly feel about the military and all the damage it does to us and the whole world, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. How about you, Susan? How are you resisting war today?
I just want to say, Kesley, it's so important that one-to-one interaction for people to be able to talk with you and ask those questions and feel that you're approachable and say, okay, maybe that changes my image. It changes the stereotype. So please keep on doing that. As you know, I'm really kind of in your face and have been for many years. I did work in hospitals for a long time, in the public sector. But today, the work that I'm doing centers around reconciling and healing the wounds of war between the Vietnamese and American veterans who participated in that war. So there are a couple of things we do. One of the things is there are Veterans for Peace delegations that go to Vietnam and visit people who have been harmed by Agent Orange and apologize for their role in the destruction and the death and worse of the Vietnamese. And we do have Vietnamese delegations come over here from a sister organization from Vietnam. We work together on legislation that's been introduced to the House by Representative Barbara Lee, HR 3518, that is to take care of those who had been harmed, the children, the grandchildren, the veterans, both the Americans, the Vietnamese, and Vietnamese Americans who have been harmed by the Americans' use of Agent Orange dioxin in Southeast Asia. That is, we're talking now about 50, 55 years later, and understanding and having people understand that wars don't stop when the bombs stop falling and the guns stop shooting, that the damages of war continue on forever into generations. And as we started with, part of it is the physical damage, and the other part is the long-lasting emotional and intergenerational damage, because those who have been to war and haven't had time to step back and take care of themselves and understand why they did certain things continue that harm into generations. So part of the rest of our work is educating people about moral injury. And I just have to say one thing about post-traumatic stress. Please understand it is post-traumatic stress. Leave off the D for disorder. The disorder is with the military and this society that sends young people to war. It is not with individual veterans who come back from war. And we have this responsibility to take care of each other and take care of all those who have been harmed.
Thank you. I hate that post-traumatic stress disorder is called disorder. Like, I understand the reason for it from a medical standpoint, but like, it is completely natural to have a reaction, a like major reaction to experiencing those things. That's as natural as it possibly could be. Thank you so much for saying that, Susan. So we are going to wrap this up now. Once again, I am Jules Vaquera. Thank you for being with us here on the Gamers for Peace Twitch channel. Join us throughout the week. Tomorrow night, we do not have our community game night because instead we will be watching The Drummer with Danny Glover, and we are doing a screening of it jointly with About Face. And so we will be doing a Q&A with Danny Glover himself as a part of the Q&A tomorrow night. Friday, we will have our ad slam. Monday, again, you will get to see Highly Sensitive Unicorn talking about alternatives to military service during Mentorship Monday. And Tuesday, we will again be jumping into Cyberpunk for Tabletop Tuesday. We hope to see y'all around. Any last words, folks?
Just thank you so much for the invitation. Kesley, it was wonderful to meet you, and hopefully someday we'll meet in person.
Awesome.
Great to meet you too, Susan.
All right, and my last words are fuck war. Peace, 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 peace.